Dr. Yuri Maltsev is a Mises Institute senior fellow and professor of economics at Carthage College, but he's best known as a Soviet defector who worked as a government economist and witnessed firsthand how the economy of the former USSR worked or didn't work. He's famous for having advised senior government officials on both sides of the Cold War and is sought after by Western media as an expert on the Gorbachev perestroika era. We discuss not only his defection from the former USSR, but also his defection from the Marxist economic mindset, the crime of reading Hayek, why so many Westerners still have a naive and romantic view of socialism, how the ruble was nothing more than a fiat rationing coupon, and why people with contempt for consumerism never visited a Soviet grocery store. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mises Weekends. I'm Jeff Deist. We're very pleased to be joined by Dr. Yuri Maltsev. Yuri, how are you today?
Oh, I'm very fine. Yes, very nice to be with you today.
Well, full disclosure, I had an opportunity to meet Yuri in Chicago once via a mutual friend. We've had dinner. Obviously, you've been to the Mises Institute many, many times over the years, and our listeners are probably already quite familiar with your work. But I'd love to throw something out to you because I get this all the time, this impression all the time, is that Americans and rich Westerners still have a naive and unrealistic view of socialism. They don't really seem to get what it's all about. But having lived in the former Soviet Union, do you find Westerners overly credulous about socialism?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's very difficult, I would say, for the Westerners to who are blessed with all this abundance of material goods, of this wonderful choices they have in life, to believe that somewhere else, somebody else does not have these choices. That's why I would say that many rich Westerners they embrace socialism. They think they will have. Everybody else would be the same as well.
Let's speak about the college students you teach. You've been at Carthage for about 20 years. So today you're teaching the millennials relative to their parents who are mostly baby boomers. Do you find them receptive to market ideas, or do you find them also somewhat brainwashed, somewhat, do they lack knowledge about what socialism really is?
I would say that during my 23 years already at Carthage, I can see that there is a lot of cultural changes are going on, negative cultural changes are going on in our society, because students coming out of the public schools here in the Midwest are getting more and more brainwashed and way more pro-socialistic than they were 20 years ago. We have the liberty-minded people have some dents, however, in this mentality, because on campus we have a thriving Ron Paul group, we have Young Americans for Liberty group. So I think that we should be very thankful to Ron Paul for introducing ideas of Austrian economics into a mass audience. Today, a lot of students know what Austrian economics is all about, while 23 years ago, very few, if any, would recognize this term. From another hand, majority of students are still, I would say, within the so-called mainstream socialist ideology, which is predominant in the United States.
You mentioned Austrian economics. This is a question I've always had for you. I mean, I can understand coming to the United States as a defector from a Soviet economy that was dismal, that you might have an incentive to embrace free market or capitalist principles. But how did you come to be an Austrian as opposed to a monetarist or a Chicagoite or a neoclassical economist?
I would think that Austrian school is the most logical. It goes farther than any other school in repudiating evil. It's the school which is both scientifically proven to be true and also has the highest moral ground, because the basis for Austrian economics is liberty, is individual choice. And that's why it's not, I'm not Austrian not because Austrian economics would lead to, I would say, production of more bathtubs than any other system, but because it's based on liberty. And liberty, individual choice, our subjective values, this is the real, true human values, real, true American values. That's why I'm proudly Austrian. How I became Austrian, I think a couple of years ago I was on a Glenn Beck show. Together with Tom Woods, and we were praising Road to Stardom by Hayek. And Road to Stardom was my gateway to freedom. I've read Road to Stardom when I was at Moscow State University. At that time, you could get a jail sentence up to 7 years just for having a book. For passing this book around, you could get 12 years. And today, I am proud to give my students extra credit for reading Road to Stardom.
So your physical possession of the book was almost like a black market good, like an illegal drug, for instance.
That's right. And I would say, and it was treated as drugs, because Karl Marx, his infamous quip is that religion is the opium for the people, and so religion would be treated as a drug industry, as a legal drug industry in the Soviet Union. But then because communism itself, socialism, is nothing but secular religion. It's a religion which wanted to establish its total monopoly over people's thought. So any deviations from that monopoly, and definitely Austrian economics was exactly the opposite from socialist ideology, was punishable, and punishable in a very severe way.
I'd like to touch on what you mentioned earlier, which is consumerism in America and in the West. There's very few Americans and Westerners, really, who have ever known anything other than material abundance. Let's say only the older World War II generation that has some memories of the Great Depression, for example. I just wonder, could I get your take on how this colors people's perceptions of economic and government systems? Because they've just never lived in a time or a place where there wasn't material abundance.
I think it's very easy to be anti-consumerist when you have a lot of things to consume. It's the people. I mean, I have a lot of colleagues in academia who would bash Walmart or would treat McDonald's as a great culture slayer overseas and whatnot. They don't realize that people want to consume, that people want to have their kids to be healthy, to be well fed, and to be happy. And consumerism, is nothing wrong with consumerism. And I would say that recently I met one of my colleagues who was like the Walmart basher on my campus in a Walmart, happily buying stuff. So I would say that it's easy again to reject consumerism when you're rich enough. And that's why liberals, as we call them, they from one hand they trash capitalism, from another hand they're happily enjoying the fruits of capitalism.
One of the examples you've provided from your time in a system, in a society that had anything but material abundance, the former USSR, is in the form of an article entitled "What Soviet Medicine Teaches Us." This was on Mises.org a couple of years ago. I'm just hoping you could speak a little bit about your experience with Soviet medicine, not only the shortages that a collectivized medical system engenders, but also the bribes that I think some people may not understand.
Yes. Well, if you ration something, then definitely you are getting a huge black market for these goods or services they are trying to either ration or whatnot. Obamacare is exactly for rationing healthcare. It reduces choices of people. And according to the president himself, that Obamacare, the goal of Obamacare is to reduce costs. And if you reduce costs, how you can reduce? You either squeeze providers, you don't pay medical people enough, or you deny care. So in Obamacare, that's both. And I am very much surprised that my fellow Americans are giving up their freedom for nothing, for promise that it will be cheaper. Yes, the cheapest healthcare would be no healthcare. Cheapest healthcare would be, I don't know, in 1960, how much you would pay for for heart bypass or for hip replacement. Nothing. You would save a lot because these things were not available. And that's why I'm really kind of this